Have you ever heard the term luxury belief? In broad, general, and short, it refers to ideas, thoughts, or ideologies, beliefs, that are held by people who will never be negatively affected by these beliefs or the problems that they point out, that won't have to sacrifice in order to deal with those issues, or will not be affected by the problems that those issues present, like, poverty to a multi-millionaire, for example. Instead, these luxury beliefs, whilst imparting no hardships upon the person who holds them, grants instead societal status. It allows them to look upon society and go, I am good, I share your worries, and thereby elevate themselves. It can loosely be conflated with the idea of virtue signaling, but it's on a more ideological basis, more of a belief basis, rather than a one-off, hey, look at me, I'm a good person as well. Another term for this might be useful idiot, indeed, as by and large people who hold luxury beliefs would be the very first in line to be eaten by their revolutionary comrades. And, Pokimane is a brilliant example of all of this, as she's managed to say something rather stupid. Now, bullying Pokimane for saying dumb things is not necessarily the most, orbital of potatoes, by any stretch of the imagination, but it points towards a wider issue that I kind of want to talk a little bit about. So, first and foremost, let's see what Pokimane has to say. Pokimane? That will not be the first or last time I misspeak that.
Do you think someday we'll have a revolution like that in America? Right? It's getting there, right?
We already have one.
Another one.
What's going on?
The wealth disparity is getting bad.
The wage gap, I hate that shit.
No wealth disparity.
Well,
I do love this part as well. This isn't the actual point or anything, but I adore how this guy is like, communist talking point, wage gap. And she's like, no, silly, wealth disparity, a different communist talking point.
Wage gap is like between men and women. Men and women, we love each other.
Facts.
And we hate the rich.
I want you to pay special attention to this young gentleman's facial expression.
Anyway. Too much.
Aren't you the rich?
Aren't you the rich?
No!
No, I'm Pokimane. I'm only worth about, $20-30 million? How could you think I'm rich?
Like the ultra rich, the ultra giga rich, the
You have to
unnecessarily
clarify.
rich.
They're gonna clip that and it's gonna make you look bad.
Oh,
It is indeed going to make you look bad. Good advice, young sir. Very much so. So, this is one of those amusing things about the luxury belief. If you're going to identify with a position as socialism, for example, which is what they usually hold, because, well, having socialist beliefs in entertainment today in the Western world confers tremendous benefits. As we will see later on, it will allow you to say and do things that other people would at the very least be deplatformed for, or indeed outright arrested for. Socialism in the upper echelons of Western society is a shield and a suit of armor that has remained damn near impregnable for a decade, only now slowly beginning to show the cracks. But Pokimane, having become somewhat affluent herself, has now shifted the targeting point. She's not unnecessarily rich. She's not ultra giga rich. No. Yes, she has a $3.5 million home in one of the most expensive cities on Earth. Sure, but that's not unnecessary. She's got to have that. I mean, a roof over her head is nothing but the bare minimum necessities, of course. Simply giving away cars. In addition to $33,000 to cover any taxes, that's not unnecessarily rich. No. Of course not. upper class, upper middle class at best, having a net value of $25 million approximately in 2023. It's not unnecessarily rich. A girl's got to eat. And she's going to be able to feed herself pretty well with an income and a worth like this. But again, Pokimane, there we go again, is hardly unique in this by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, one of the OGs of this is the rather famous politician Bernie Sanders. See, Bernie Sanders has been rather famed as a socialist and on occasion almost downright communist, in fact, having vacationed even in the Soviet Union apparently, which is interesting. Anyways, he was famous for his screeds against the millionaires, the rich, the wealthy elites that were tapping all of the resources out of America, that was destroying the social structure and increasing the wage gap and the wealth gap. These people, these leeches, had to be dealt with. They had to be taxed and crushed underfoot before they ruined society. Then he shifted up a couple of income brackets and suddenly it's the billionaires that's the problem. Oh, well, how very odd. How very unexpected indeed. It's also strange how so many politicians tend to amass millions of dollars of fortunes, isn't it? Odd. Public servants really should not be in office one should ever be able to become rich off of, but details. He too, of course, subtly shifted his focus and is now speaking to a more appreciative crowd. Bernie Sanders making a surprise appearance at Coachella to sermonize on the evils of wealth in front of a crowd of people who paid at least $600 a ticket to be there is peak 21st century Democratic Party. It's not even the Democratic Party. This is simply just the grift. That is what this is, near exclusively, near universally. Again, Pokimane doesn't want socialism. If Pokimane truly, let's assume, wanted to benefit the poor, wanted to benefit the majority of people, and to aid them in their day-to-day lives, to did something to really help them out, okay, you could make the argument, oh, but just, give away your money. Don't spend it on $3.5 million homes, and to an extent you could make that argument, but nobody gonna give away their cash. If anything, then let's think political ideology. What kind of system of government should millionaires like Bernie Sanders and Pokimane be advocating for if they really wanted to help the common man? Well, it'd be a plutocracy. Straight up. If these people really wanted to help the majority of people, they would argue for a system where the wealthy hold greater political power so that they could change things as they apparently know best to benefit everybody. But again, saying that you're a plutocrat out loud is not going to earn you a whole lot of friends. Saying that you're a socialist, however, no matter how high the percentage of champagne might be in that mix, oh, that will gain you significant benefits, as demonstrated by our friend Hasan Piker here, who indeed has a spirited defense of Pokimane. And you know what? He does actually make at least one point, so let's give him a quick listen as well.
I think it's because of the closeness that most streamers have to being normal people at a certain point in their lives, as opposed to like a guy who's been a multi-billionaire for the past decade or so. Most streamers have a much nicer and much better understanding of what it used to be like when they didn't have fucking money, and therefore have takes like this. You want rich people to have takes like this.
So, he is in part correct there. Somebody who once had nothing will undoubtedly be more sympathetic towards people who have nothing, or I don't know if sympathetic is the correct term, but they'll have an easier time identifying with them rather than someone who, grew up as a part of a wildly successful family, de facto nobility, who climbed to his current status in life largely off the back of familial connections, and now enjoys an incredibly advantageous position at a major streaming network, where they seemingly can't be taken off air for more than a week at a time, no matter how ridiculous one's takes are. No matter how outright criminal or pro-terrorist they are. Somebody like that, well, they would have a very hard time at identifying with anyone normal. Especially whilst living in, say, in Ivory Tower. Although, I will say here, all respect for Pokimane for wanting to close the earnings gap, because poor Hasan, his house is only worth $2.7 million. He just cannot reach up to Pokimane, so good on her for wanting to close the earnings disparity between the 1%. Actually, no, excuse me. Hasan might actually have a certain claim to being 1%. Pokimane is 0.5% or something. The 1% is, I believe, $5 to $6 million odd. Pokimane's about 4 times that. Pokimane is ultra super luxury yacht rich. She's approaching the point in time where she's buying boats the size of small cities. No, okay, slight hyperbole, but you get what I'm going with this. Now, Hasan here, of course, is an example of the social benefits that is granted to someone for holding these luxury beliefs. Again, Hasan is not going to be affected by any of this. He doesn't really expect there to be a socialist uprising. He barely understands half of the things he talks about at the best of times. And if it did happen, well, you can guarantee that he'd be on the first flight out of the country before the hungry hippo started hammering down his door. But his advantageous position. So, there was a funny little thing a while ago where Ethan Klein, of course, made a content nuke on Hasan Piker, where he simply played many minutes of clips of Hasan being blatantly pro-terrorist, watching and listening to straight up Hamas propaganda, interviewing a Houthi pirate, etc., etc. It was, well, categorically damning, which is largely why Hasan probably hasn't even watched it yet, because it makes him look really bad. But anyways, Ethan Klein had this video playing on repeat on his own Twitch channel over and over again, until it was taken down. Why was it taken down? Well, it was taken down for pro-terrorist sympathizing. This video, simply playing clips of Hasan Piker, was struck for terrorism. Wow, that's weird. Or, Hasan Piker, America deserved 9/11. Hasan friends with Frogan. I hope all American soldiers get PTSD, etc., etc. The man probably says something that would land most of us in jail on the daily. If I was saying half the shit he was saying, but in the opposite direction, politically speaking, there are legitimate jail sentences in my country for that. Hell, in most of Europe, in fact, that would be extremely legally dubious. Yet Hasan, well, worst case scenario, he goes on a vacation for a week and then returns to his Twitch channel. Indeed, or things that other people have received week-long bans, like, what was it? Asmongold received a week-long ban for his take over Palestine, which was essentially, I don't like it, but one side is going to have to win, the correct take. Meanwhile, Hasan called for the assassination of a US senator and received a 24-hour suspension. That is the thickness of plot armor that these luxury beliefs give you, okay? It's no wonder they cling to it. There's no wonder they adopt this stance when they see the obvious advantages of assuming it. Oh, wait, hold on. If I simply claim to believe these things, whilst advantaging myself every way economically, whilst hauling in literally millions of dollars in donations, subscriptions, etc., enough to buy myself houses, cars, and live like a king, and I can also make myself immune from being taken down? Well, what intelligent individual wouldn't take such an obvious exploit dangled right in front of their noses? It is why this is primarily advantageous as a grift thing. I don't believe that most of these people know, or even indeed believe, any of the things they say, particularly not Pokimane. Pokimane exists solely in a capitalist society. There can be no Pokimane under communism. In fact, under communism, she would probably be branded as degenerate, as a danger to public morality, and best case, be taken off air. Worst case, well, they did have a good way to deal with various political dissidents in the Soviet Union, and indeed in Russia today. They are very, very experienced with this stuff. But under capitalism, well, you can earn a lot of money off this. Now, granted, Pokimane is at the top of the pile of what is a bit of a ever-decreasing efficiency pyramid scheme, but nevertheless, she's earned enough bank to live happily ever after. If she invests this even with a modicum of intelligence, she'll be fine for the rest of her life, after working, quote-unquote, for a handful of years. She doesn't really need to do anything anymore, but why not? If you are so thoroughly shielded from the consequences of your actions, why not keep going? Why not ride the gravy train into the ground all the way to the station, and then potentially switch sides at the end? I would be very surprised, for example, if somebody who held these luxury beliefs would continue to hold them if they were ever exposed, shall we say, to the reality that their opposition has dealt with. I would find it very interesting to see if the roles were flipped, if Hasan arrived at the point of a right-winger in 2014, if he would have the ability and the strength of character to remain a socialist, or right-winger in this case, for another 10 years. Oh, somehow I doubt it very much, and I certainly doubt he'd have a platform with which to prove it from. But that again will be the real test of all of this, the luxury belief, whether or not any of them actually decide to continue to cling to them, as eventually these things will move from being a obvious advantage to being actually an unironic disadvantage. Because a system that allows itself to be eaten from the inside out, that allows itself to be hammered repeatedly by bad agents from within, even as it is at its weakest, a system that allows itself to be categorically dismantled step by step by bad actors, it's not a system that can continue to exist for a very long period of time at all. This, again, is the paradox of tolerance. Popper, whose misquotes by the left have been frequent, blatant, and painful. As in the terms of the paradox of tolerance, he was specifically talking about communism. We must always be ready to make the argument, to respond to critique, and with, I forget, I'm paraphrasing here incidentally, to arguments with arguments, but we must be willing to repress, or oppress straight out, those who reject the argument, lest they reach for the fist and the pistol. Now we're kind of past that point already, as America has seen, armed mobs of anarchists on the streets on multiple occasions, but the undermining, the thing that caused those arms mobs, is still there. It is still not being targeted in anywhere near the way, the effect, the vociferousness, and the toxicity that was aimed against the opposition when they themselves were in power. And I, for one, by the way, am fully committed to repaying that ill step by step. I do not wish to see an easing of the culture war until that has actually happened. The only time I will argue that anyone take their foot off the gas in that respect is when it risks continuing that path. See, I want to arrive at 2014 for left-wingers, but to get there, we've got to do what they did. We have to boil the frog on it, in essence. Otherwise, well, largely the reason why the left has lost its popularity is because of its undue cruelty. If we simply replicate that cruelty, but over the course of a year or two instead of 10 or 20, we'll find ourselves in the very self-same position. And I, for one, think I've already proved my courage of my convictions. But frankly, if I could choose, I'd rather not go through another 10 years of it. Those luxury beliefs are starting to look damn good. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.